I had always loved my husband, Tunde, with all my heart. From the very first moment we met at university, there was an undeniable connection between us. Tunde was charming, confident, and full of life. He had this ability to light up any room he walked into, and it wasn't long before our friendship blossomed into something deeper. Over time, our love grew stronger, and eventually, we made the promise to spend the rest of our lives together. Our marriage was a union filled with hope, laughter, and mutual respect, a bond that seemed unshakable. Yet, despite the joy we shared, there was always a small, unspoken question lingering in the back of my mind. Tunde was an energetic and ambitious man, and his enthusiasm extended to every part of his life, including the intimate moments we shared as husband and wife. He was always eager, always passionate, and while I cherished the closeness it brought us, I sometimes wondered about the depth of his love. Would he still adore me if I couldn't meet his physical needs for a time? Would his patience endure if I asked for space? These thoughts gnawed at me quietly, especially during moments when I noticed how much he craved that connection. It wasn't that I doubted his love, far from it. But there was a part of me that wanted to know, deep down, if Tunde loved me for who I was as a person or if our bond was tied too closely to our physical relationship. His desire for intimacy was unwavering, and while I had always tried to match his energy, a quiet curiosity began to grow within me. What would happen if I chose to take a step back? Would it create a distance between us, or would it reveal a side of our relationship that we hadn't yet explored? It was a question I couldn't shake, and as much as I didn't want to disrupt the harmony we shared, I felt compelled to find the answer. Would Tunde, the man who adored me in every way, still be the patient and understanding partner I believed him to be if I said no for a while? The thought both terrified and intrigued me. It wasn't about doubting him, it was about truly understanding the strength of our bond. For the past few months, I had felt a distance between us that I couldn't fully explain. It wasn't anything specific, just a quiet realization that maybe we were losing touch in a way I hadn't expected. I began to wonder if he was more interested in my body than in me as a person. So, one day, after a particularly difficult conversation where we didn't connect as I had hoped, I decided I would do something drastic. I decided I would deny him my body for one whole week. It was a bold and unsettling decision, one that filled me with a mix of curiosity, fear, and determination. I knew it wouldn't be easy for either of us. Tunde was a man of passion, and I had always reciprocated that energy. This wasn't just a change in routine, it was a deliberate challenge to the foundation of our relationship. Would he feel hurt, frustrated, or even angry? Could he still value me, see me, if I wasn't offering the intimacy he often sought? These questions gnawed at my heart, and though I didn't want to risk causing pain, I felt I had to know the truth. Was our connection built on more than just physical closeness? Could his love withstand this test? This wasn't a decision I made lightly. It wasn't about punishing him or trying to prove a point. It was about finding clarity, uncovering a deeper understanding of the bond we shared. Would this test bring us closer, strengthening our love in ways I couldn't yet imagine? Or would it reveal cracks I wasn't ready to face? That night, as I lay beside him, my heart raced with anticipation. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to do. Tunde, as usual, reached out to me, his touch familiar and warm, a silent invitation to the intimacy we had always shared. But this time, I pulled away gently, offering him a soft smile to ease the sting of rejection. "Not tonight, Tunde," I said quietly, my voice calm but firm. He paused, his brow furrowing in mild confusion. "Are you okay?" he asked, his tone laced with genuine concern. I nodded, placing a light kiss on his cheek. "I'm fine," I reassured him, even as my own emotions swirled inside me. I turned over and closed my eyes, hoping sleep would come quickly, but my mind raced with questions and doubts. As the silence settled over the room, I wondered if I had made the right choice. Would this test bring us closer or drive a wedge between us? Only time would tell, but for now, I held on to the hope that this journey would reveal the strength of our love in ways neither of us had expected. He seemed confused, but I didn't explain. I simply kissed him on the cheek and went to bed. The first night was the hardest of all. Tunde had always been so loving and caring, and his touch felt warm and familiar. As we lay in bed, his hand gently rested on my waist, like it always did. It wasn't just a habit, it was his way of showing how much he cared. I could feel him move slightly, his body leaning closer to mine. It was a silent gesture, a way of asking without words. He didn't say anything, but I knew what he wanted. It was the kind of closeness we had always shared, the kind that made us feel connected and loved. But this time, I didn't respond. I stayed still, my heart beating a little faster as I tried to hold my ground. It wasn't easy to pull away from something so familiar, so comforting. I felt like I was breaking an unspoken rule between us, and it hurt to do so. The silence in the room felt heavy, almost like a thick blanket. I wondered if he would say something, if he would ask me why I was acting this way. Part of me wanted him to, but another part was afraid of the conversation that might follow. For a moment, Tunde stayed quiet, then he let out a soft sigh. The sound was gentle but carried a weight that made my chest tighten. I could tell he was confused, maybe even a little hurt, but he didn't push me. Instead, he shifted slightly, giving me space, and the room grew quiet once again. As I lay there, staring into the darkness, I couldn't help but wonder if I was doing the right thing. This test was supposed to help us, but it already felt so hard. Could our love handle this? Could we handle this? Only time would tell, but for now, I had to be strong. Tunde turned over, his back to me, and the room grew quiet again. I could tell he was thinking about what had just happened, but I didn't push him. I didn't want to make him feel pressured. This was my test, not his. The next morning, he didn't bring it up. It was as if he had accepted my refusal, but I could tell something had changed. There was a distance, a small space between us, even though we were still talking and going through the motions of our everyday lives. The second day felt a lot like the first. In the morning, we sat together at the dining table, sharing a quiet breakfast. Tunde told a silly joke about something that happened at work, and we laughed like we always did. For a moment, it felt like everything was normal between us, like nothing had changed. But as the day went on, I began to notice little signs of tension in Tunde. He didn't say anything outright, but it was there in the way he acted. His eyes followed me a bit too closely, especially when I walked past him wearing a slightly fitted dress. He didn't stare, but the way he looked at me said more than words ever could. It wasn't just admiration, it was longing, a silent question he wasn't asking aloud. Tunde's words, too, were different. He would slip in small, playful comments, complimenting how I looked or teasing me in a way that usually led to him pulling me close. "You're looking extra fine today," he said with a grin. His voice carried that soft, suggestive tone he used when he wanted to spark intimacy. But this time, I didn't react the way I normally would. Instead of flirting back or leaning into his touch, I smiled politely and quickly changed the subject. Tunde didn't push, but I could see the subtle shift in his expression, a flicker of confusion, maybe even irritation, that disappeared just as quickly as it came. By the end of the day, the weight of my actions began to settle on both of us. While Tunde didn't openly complain or demand an explanation, his quiet frustration was clear. It was in the way he lingered near me, hoping I might change my mind. It was in the way his laughter faded a little too soon during our conversations, as though he was distracted by something unsaid. I could feel the distance between us growing, but I held firm. This was my test, after all. I needed to see how much our love could endure, even if it was hard on both of us. Still, I couldn't shake the uneasiness creeping into my heart. Would we be okay? Or was I unknowingly creating a wall between us that I wouldn't know how to break? When I refused him again, this time a little more firmly, I saw a brief flash of irritation cross his face. He didn't say anything right away but gave me a long look before turning away to get into bed. "Why, babe?" he finally asked, his voice low. I paused, taking a deep breath. I knew this moment would come, and I needed to be honest, even though I felt vulnerable. "I'm testing you," I said quietly. "Testing me?" He sounded almost confused. "Yes," I whispered. "I want to see if you still love me if I'm not offering you what you want." Tunde was silent for a long time. The tension between us was palpable. I could feel my heart beating faster as I awaited his response. Would he be hurt? Would he understand? Finally, he spoke, his voice a little softer than before. I don't need you to test me, babe. I love you. But I also want you. I can't help that. And I miss you. I sighed, feeling a sense of relief. I just wanted to know if you could love me beyond that. If you could love me even when I say no. I do love you, he said, reaching out to touch my hand. But I can't lie. It's hard not to have that intimacy with you. By the fourth day, I began to feel the weight of my own actions. Denying him had created a strange kind of space between us, one that wasn't just physical but emotional as well. We still talked, but there was an underlying tension I hadn't expected. Tunde wasn't angry with me, but I could see how this had begun to affect him. The way he looked at me, the subtle touches that had once been so natural, now felt hesitant, as though he wasn't sure how to approach me anymore. I began to wonder if my test was worth it. What if it had done more harm than good? What if I had miscalculated and pushed him away in a way I couldn't repair? That evening, as we sat down for dinner, I decided I needed to talk to him again. Can we talk? I asked, my voice quiet. Of course, he replied, setting his fork down. About what? I looked at him, searching for the right words. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just needed to know if you loved me for who I am and not just because of, well, this. I gestured toward the space between us. I'm sorry if this has been hard on you. Tunde smiled softly, a gentle expression that made my heart ache. I get it, babe. But you don't need to test me. I love you, and I want to be with you. I just want to know that we're still connected. I miss us. I nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. I miss us, too. By the time the week came to an end, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened, and I realized something surprising. My test had worked, but not in the way I had imagined. It wasn't just about physical closeness or proving a point about love, it had become something much bigger. This week had forced both Tunde and me to look deeper into our relationship. I had underestimated just how much he cherished me, not just for physical reasons, but for the bond we shared. His longing for my affection wasn't just about intimacy, it was about the way we connected, the comfort we brought to each other, and the closeness that made us a team. At the same time, I hadn't expected how much I would miss him. The small moments, his gentle touch, the warmth of his embrace, the way he always seemed to be there for me had left a void I hadn't prepared for. Without his affection, I felt like something essential was missing, like we were both lost in the silence we had created. This experience had opened my eyes to something important. Our relationship wasn't just about what we gave each other physically. It was about understanding each other's needs, learning to communicate openly, and never taking the love we shared for granted. What started as a test had become a lesson, a reminder of how deeply we needed and valued one another. On the final night of my self-imposed test, the weight of the week pressed heavily on my heart. As I lay there in the quiet darkness, I turned to look at Tunde. His back was facing me, his broad shoulders rising and falling with each steady breath. It broke my heart to see him like this, silent and withdrawn, as though he had resigned himself to the idea that this was how things would be between us from now on. He wasn't angry, and he hadn't said a word to make me feel guilty, but his body spoke volumes. The way he held himself, the distance in the space we shared, made it clear that he was hurting. I realized how much I missed the warmth of his touch, the way he used to reach for me without hesitation, and the way his love always felt so present and strong. As I stared at his silhouette in the dim light, I couldn't hold back anymore. The test was over, not because I had reached a time limit, but because I couldn't bear the distance I had created between us. I needed him to know how much I loved him, how sorry I was for pushing him away, and how deeply I longed to feel close to him again. Gently, I reached out, my fingers brushing his shoulder. He stirred slightly but didn't turn to face me, as if he wasn't sure what to expect. Gathering my courage, I whispered softly, "Tunde, I'm sorry." In that moment, the tension I had felt all week seemed to crack, and I hoped that reaching out to him now would heal the space between us. But I couldn't let him think that. I couldn't let him feel rejected forever. So I gently turned him toward me and whispered, "I'm sorry for testing you, Tunde. I love you, and I want to be close to you." He opened his eyes, surprised, and then smiled, pulling me into his arms. "I love you too, babe." And that was all I needed to hear. The test was over. It wasn't about the week of denial, it was about us rediscovering what mattered. We were more than just bodies, more than just desires, we were partners, learning to love each other through patience, understanding, and respect. The days following my test were like discovering a hidden treasure in our marriage. Something had shifted between Tunde and me, something deeper and more meaningful. It wasn't just about being close physically anymore, it was about truly understanding and valuing each other in ways we hadn't explored before. We began to talk more openly about everything, our fears, our dreams, our feelings. Conversations that once felt rushed or incomplete now flowed with ease. Tunde would tell me about his hopes for the future, and I found myself sharing thoughts I hadn't expressed in years. It wasn't just about bedroom matters anymore, it was about strengthening the foundation of our relationship in every aspect. Our love began to feel stronger, more grounded. The physical connection that had once seemed so central now felt like a beautiful extension of something much bigger. We weren't just partners in marriage, we were partners in every sense of the word, emotionally, spiritually, and intellectually. Through this journey, I realized that we had both passed the test. It wasn't just about me testing Tunde's patience and love, it was about both of us learning to trust, to communicate, and to grow together. It was about proving that our bond was more than skin deep, that it could weather challenges and come out even stronger. And in the end, that made all the difference. Our relationship wasn't just restored, it was renewed, leaving us more connected than ever before.